Welcome to Founders Unplugged, hosted by Greg McCallum. Long-form, honest conversations with founders and entrepreneurs from around the world. This is part 2 of this episode. Be sure to check out part 1 if you haven't already. Link in the description.
This episode is brought to you by Founder Catalyst. If you're raising funds and you need to get yourself SCIS and EIS advanced assurance and you need some help with that, then stick around to find out how you can get 5% off of Founder Catalyst's services. Okay, and we're back for part 2. I'm here with Vasileios. If you haven't checked out part 1, go and check that out. It will allow you to get to know Vasileios, who he is, what he does, a little bit about his career path, etc. And we were just ending there, getting a little bit philosophical and talking about the philosophy and ethics behind entrepreneurialism and going on a few tangents. But and along that same route, I was thinking of something just on the break there, which I wanted to pick your brains on. And you kind of touched on it a little bit in part 1, or we both kind of did. So we were talking about sort of things like SpaceX and the character, that how there's different characters that you can find in entrepreneurialism. Some of those which are kind of opportunists who look to go and, take advantage of a situation, and those that kind of think more about legacy, right? How they leave the world, the way they found it, to try and leave it better. Like, do you think that there is or should be a sort of responsibility on entrepreneurs or founders as a whole to think about the kind of impact that they have on the world? I mean, especially given where we are now as a society, both technologically, politically, religiously, like everything. Do you think that's a necessary requirement for it to be considered, or can someone just be a businessman, make money, and not concern themselves with the ethical or philosophical impact of being an entrepreneur?
I'm against dictating what it should and what it shouldn't, but I believe in a true free market, free choice. It will be more beneficial for entrepreneurs to focus on the long term rather than on the short term, because when you focus on the long term, you can build, and what you build can accumulate, and you can continue building and creating good foundations for the next steps. So I believe it's more beneficial for entrepreneurs to be able to focus on the long term and to focus on global needs rather than to short term and local needs. But we need both local and global. So I believe in the free choice, that everyone should be able to freely choose. However, I believe the biggest returns come from a long-term global vision.
What about you personally? Do you see yourself as someone? I mean, do you think about, as a business owner and multiple-time business owner, do you think a lot about legacy in that regard? What impact is my business going to have, not only in the long term right now, but also when I'm gone? Like, what impact will it have had on the world and the people that it served?
I don't think so much using the term legacy. I think more using the term responsibility. I feel responsible that I need to produce, I need to provide some kind of value. The bigger the value, the better. So if more people receive that value freely, understand that this is a good value for them, and choose it freely, the better it will be. I feel responsible to maximize that. Maybe thinking about legacy, maybe it's, now that I'm thinking, maybe I don't like it. It's more, maybe the way I understand it, maybe it's a little bit egoistic,
Right.
like my legacy.
Right.
But this is how I think of it. Maybe it's not.
I see what you're saying, that it kind of almost iconizes yourself to some degree. Yeah, I see what you mean. That there is almost a certain heaviness to that term that implies that you were the important part of that equation, more important than what you've built or what you did to some degree. I can see what you mean, but I think that's one way of interpreting legacy. I think you can interpret legacy also by what a person, not only what they did individually, but also what they achieved or the lives that they touched. Or do you know what I mean? There's other ways I think of interpreting it too, but I can see where that would come from. I understand that interpretation of it too, for sure.
Yeah, I believe that, we have a responsibility towards our past generations, that they fought and they struggled for us to be here, because nothing is for granted.
Mm.
And then we have the responsibility to play our role now that we are here for the future generations, because if the current generations mismanage, again, nothing is for granted. Humanity is not for granted. We can press a button and end the humanity. Like we need to be very
It's
responsible
fragile.
and very, yeah, it's fragile. Like it's not. I don't see lots of humanity in other planets, so it's not for granted.
That's very true. I mean, I think about that a lot, what it's taken for us to get here and how incredibly difficult that is. And of course, my children, I have children. You have children as well? Are you a father?
No, not yet.
Not yet. Yeah. So yeah, I obviously think about that. And look, you can care about the new generations without being a father too. I don't think that's a prerequisite to caring, but it does make me wonder, like, at what point should we start caring about ourselves a little bit? Like, you know what I mean? Like, there is quite a burden there that we can place on ourselves of staying true to those that got us to where we are, while also thinking about those that come after us. At what point, are we allowed to stop and go, okay, do you know what? Maybe we should look at me. And if you look at the world around us, it seems like a lot of people are forgetting that to look after themselves, right? Quite frankly, whether it's physically, emotionally, and so on. Is it okay? Is it okay just to say, do you know what? I'm just going to do this for me, at least for now.
I believe, yes. I believe that at the end of the day, it's output maximization. So if you're not well, you cannot provide value to other people. You cannot produce. So it's a combination of, like, I will take care of others, but also I will take care of myself. The more I neglect myself, the less I could provide for the others tomorrow, because I won't be in a position. So how can you maximize the total output by taking care of the others and yourself at the same time, maybe at different levels? But I believe that if you care about the others, you need to take care of yourself as well, so that you can provide that value. So the question is how you maximize that, like not 100% to take care of yourself and neglect the others, but also you cannot take care of the others 100% and neglect yourself, because the outcome will be zero again.
I think that's that's the answer I would expect from someone that's sensible like you. But then I suppose, to play devil's advocate.
Oh, thank you. I'm not sure about
that. But it is. I mean, it is a very sensible answer. It makes sense, right?
I think we all... very nice, very good way to not answer.
But it's true. It is absolutely true. But I guess if I was to really push this and sort of try and play devil's advocate, then my question would have to be, like, ultimately, what would be wrong with being purely selfish, right? If you said, you know what, I'm going to focus on me, but I'm not going to care about who came before and who comes after, like, then can you really, like, within the framework of thinking about it, as long as it's not harming anyone else, like, then can you really go, okay, fine, like, just make a shit ton of money, like, just, sell a product? Like, I would assume that based on what you're saying, there would come a point where that just wouldn't be as sustainable as actually, taking the other approach. But it'd be, as a thought experiment, it's interesting to just think, like, is there ultimately anything really wrong with being selfish? Like, truly selfish?
If it's under the perspective of, I think you mentioned, like, take care of myself, make lots of money. In a free market, if you want to make lots of money, you need to provide value. So you have helped people. So it's not selfish. Yeah. So in a free market, by definition, making lots of money means that you provided lots of value to people. So you have helped people. Like, it's totally altruistic to make lots of money in a free market.
Legally,
Legally,
I suppose.
yes.
Yeah, that's because
That
you can make a lot of money in a free market without adding value, but that's different.
right.
Yeah.
The example that we were talking in the previous part, like Elon Musk, like he provides value in order to be able to have Starlink. Starlink makes, I don't know, like 2 billion or more per year. It's a free choice. People freely choose to get Starlink device and subscription because the benefit they get, the value they get out of that is bigger than the cost. And then Starlink makes lots of money because of that. So it provides lots of value.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's again a sensible answer, and I can't argue with that. That's very true. You know, you can't really have selfless society doesn't function very well to support purely selfish behaviors, or at least consistently selfish behaviors. That's just not the way society is really. Human beings are arranged to support that.
Yeah, like if you're selfish, meaning you provide zero value, you're not going to have the resources to survive. You need to provide some kind of value in order to survive.
It's collaborative.
So yeah. The very important point though is the rules of the game to be like you need a free market.
Hi, a friendly reminder to share this episode with your network, like, and subscribe. And if you are feeling really supportive, please consider reviewing the show on the podcast platform of your choice. It all really helps support what we do. Thank you. Now back to the show.
We have seen like societies going to zero with like authoritarian, non-free political ideologies, etc.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then it needs to be very providing value. You need to be very conscious and focused on who you provide that value to, which is essentially like speaking of with entrepreneurial terms, ICP, ideal client profile, and UVP, unique value proposition, or VP, value proposition. So you need to be either as an individual or as a company or as a business, you need to be able to answer very specifically what is the value you provide and who you provide that value to. And both need to be very specific, that this is my target group, and the smaller you are, the more specific the target group should be. And we see that with many startups, that they try to answer what is your target market. They try to answer it with a number that it's in billions or hundreds of billions, while when you start, like you need to make your first million. And in order to make your first million, you cannot focus on a $1 billion market, on hundreds of billions. Like you need to be very focused. You need to be very, very narrow. Because if you're not focused, you cannot identify what your target group really needs. So then you cannot provide the value. You cannot be useful.
Sorry, my son was trying to come into the office. That's why I was shaking my head. Even though
I
there's a big sign that says "Don't come in."
I thought that you were disagreeing with me.
No, okay. I agreed with what you were saying. That's why I had to say. Yeah, no, that was all wrong. Everything you said was wrong. Absolutely. And look, I'm guilty of this too, which is so ironic because I spent so many years giving this advice to people, and then when it comes to my own business, I make all the mistakes that I tell people to avoid. This is just such a typical thing, to do, and as a commercial advisor. But it's very difficult because you come up with a solution and you can't help yourself but think, oh, it could help this people, it could help these people. Oh, if we change this, it can help these people. And it's very, very important to stay focused, especially early on, as we are very, very early. We've just launched, right? We're pre-revenue. We're just starting to approach the right people with the right message and stay focused, because it's so easy to get distracted or or think, oh, we should try this or we should try that. You've got to stay the course. You really have to stay the course. Yeah.
What are you working on, Greg, right now?
Well,
You just launched?
Yeah, well, we just launched, early this year. We spent a good couple of years in development, but essentially it's a service first and later it will be SaaS, which is, I think, a sensible way to do something when you first start. But essentially the service is sales skills auditing that provides feedback and reviews, essentially, of performance skills metrics for salespeople, for RevOps leaders. So they can outsource the sort of the performance review and feedback process to a third party, us. And we do that in a fully remote, fully scalable, very, very affordable way. So it's, because it's, as someone that's been in sales for many, many years, that's one of the hardest things to find the time to do consistently with your sales team, especially if you've got hundreds of reps across all different parts of the world, to find time to do one-on-ones. And AI tools are okay, but they don't have that same nuance. So we actually have human beings reviewing people selling, basically, and then providing a competency framework and analysis. And there's a whole load of other stuff that's really cool about that, because we then make that data ready to train AI, which is a whole next levels thing. So whether that's the organization wants to use that to train their own internal AI or sell the data or whatever, but there's a ton of applications. So that's kind of the next big thing really now, isn't it? Is capturing skills data and being led as an organization based on skills data metrics, which is another big trend that's happening, especially out in the States. Hasn't quite made its way over to the UK yet. But yeah, running an organization based on skills data, which I think is a very meritocratic way of doing things and a very sensible way of doing things.
Right. And you need the right data in order to do that. You cannot let AI hallucinate. So you need to have the right data. And then you're right, there are certain organizations that they would like this data to stay private, and it can be their secret sauce for success. So that's very interesting.
Yeah. It's very early. We're going to be launching pilots soon with a number of different organizations, but also a few different types of organizations. I suppose this is one thing that kind of sounds counterintuitive to what you were just saying, but it's still part of the same truth, ultimately, of what you were saying, which is, yes, you can have your focus and your ideal customer profile in mind, but also you do need to experiment a little bit, right? So we know what the value is, who it's for. We know it's for sales, RevOps, for salespeople. Boom. Okay, got it. But then we know within that, there's a ton of different industries, right? So it's okay, let's try a few. So for example, we're speaking with one VC firm at the moment who maybe want to use us as part of their due diligence process. They might want to also try and experiment using us to evaluate their own internal skills when they're speaking with prospective founders, right? So to measure the impact and skills of their associates. It may be that they might want to even look at us and using us to support their portfolio companies and to measure skill in their portfolio companies. So that's one use case. And then another is a traditional sales organization, but then it might be they do more field sales, might do more online sales, might be SaaS, it might be direct to consumer. So it's even within that one segment, there's enough to experiment with. We don't need any more to then say, okay, now let's also try and sell to EdTech, or let's try and sell to HR, and you know what I mean? There's enough, but so you still have plenty of room for experimentation, even when you're focused on that one ICP, right? It's just then a case of verticals, really.
Exactly, like the market segmentation, and you need to experiment before you answer.
Yep.
What is my sweet spot? My beachhead, the way to enter into the market. You need to experiment, get data, and then you, based on data, you can make the right decision. What is your point of entry into the market? And then the other thing that I tell startups is that focusing on a specific segment is also it's a superpower, because it will allow you to be very successful on that segment, because your resources are very limited, because you are a startup, so you have limited resources. What is that hyper-focused segment where it's so hyper-focused that your limited resources look look a lot, look like abundant resources for that hyper segment. Because if you target the whole market, you need billions of dollars to do like anything there. So if you are very if you have very limited resources, you need to have a more limited market focus. So that your resources are abundant, and then it's the other thing. This is your protection from the competition, because if there are bigger companies that can be your competitor, bigger companies will never focus on a very small segment because it's waste for their resources. Like, for example, Apple will never try to get into a sector that won't make them at least $10 billion. So if your target as a startup is to make your first million, you can be hyper focused. You will never have competition from bigger companies. So you will have a green playing field to make your first money and then go from there.
It's a really good point. Whenever I think of this topic, there's always a specific conversation I remember I had when I was doing a pro bono, because I do these 1 hour pro bono advisory sessions, right? So anyone that wants them, that people can just book my link and book 1
congrats.
hour. Thank you. And when I don't really talk about it that much, but when I first announced it, the first year of doing that, I had like 500 calls with founders. It was insane. Raising investment is painful enough without getting bogged down in the legal costs. That's why I'm using Founder Catalyst, today's sponsor for Peer, my startup's pre-seed raise. We've been lucky enough to have Sam, the CEO of Founder Catalyst, on the show before. Go and check out that episode. Their funding round service offers the most cost-effective way to produce funding round legals in the UK. It's just £1,495 excluding VAT, with no monthly fees or hidden extras, no matter how much you're raising. One Founder Catalyst customer recently raised 2.7 million and saved around £10,000 compared to the next option. If you're looking for SEIS, EIS Advanced Assurance, they've got a 100% success rate over the last 3 years. Founder Catalyst is built by founders for founders, and from my own experience, I can't recommend them enough. You can scan the QR code on the screen around here somewhere or around there somewhere, I don't know, or use the link in the description for 5% off. Thank you to Founder Catalyst for sponsoring this episode. Now back to it. And it was fantastic. And there was one that I remember still to this day in relation to this topic. This guy had built an AI type solution that basically helped with legal documentation, drafting legal documentation, based in the UK for UK because if it was under UK law. And he was talking about he wants to go for this market, and basically his website didn't speak to anyone specifically. It just helped you with legal documents. And he's like, I can't get it off the ground. I don't know where to start. I don't know what to do. So I just asked him very directly. He's like, well, okay, what was the reason for you creating this product? What inspired you? And he told me he was in construction. There was a lot of issues he was having with creating the legal documentation. He was a lawyer himself, and so time and time again, these same documents always come up. They're always pretty much the same. Cost companies a lot of money, so he created this tool. I'm like, okay. You said you got a first couple of customers. Who are they? I said, well, most of them are in construction because that's my space. I'm like, okay. I think you know what I'm going to say then, right? It's like, sell to this really specific segment. That's the market you know. It's the market you're from. Your early customers are from that market. And at the end of the day, you're going to not convince any more of that market if your landing page doesn't say the AI legal documentation for construction lawyers or something, right? Because then if they come to that website and they don't see that, they're not going to trust you. You're not speaking to them. But if you choose, you can speak to that market directly. You can speak their language because everyone's got their own language, right? A solicitor or a lawyer that works in that space is going to speak slightly different than one that works in this space or that space. Speak their language, use their buzzwords, use their terms, speak to their specific pains. And he was like, oh yeah, that's so obvious. I was like, yeah, it usually is. It's very easy to say from the outside. It's
yes,
very easy to say.
And by having lots of calls with founders, like you mentioned, you had 500 calls. By having so many calls with founders, then you start seeing patterns of the same problems again and again. So it's not 500 different problems. It's just 5, 3, 2 specific problems.
Usually, yes. Yeah.
Again and again. Yeah.
Yeah. It's
very
usually like, how do I even start? I've started, now how do I get my first customer? Or I've got my first customer, how do I get funding? It's usually like one of those three things, you know. And the answer is usually the same from me. It's sell more. That's usually the answer. So every problem, it's always that, sell more, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
The biggest question I would get asked actually is interestingly, it is one of those questions, but the way it's asked is very interesting. It's, how do I market my business? Right. And like, so what you were saying earlier about marketing being like the tax on, I'd be like, no, that's the wrong question. I know what it is you're trying to ask, but that isn't actually what you should be asking. You know, it's not like, what social media post do I need? No, shit, please, you know, don't do that. You know, it is just go and find out where the customer lives, knock on their door and say, hey, would you like to buy my thing? That's all it is. It's sales. It's not marketing, you know?
Yeah,
I have another story that I like to tell people as well. I think you'll like it. So
yes,
quite
please.
often, and I've said it before on this show, so sorry for listeners who've heard me say this maybe 1,000 times at this point, but I often describe the difference between sales and marketing in the same way as, say you're a carpenter and you walk past a house and you see that their fence is broken, you know, recent storm or something, the fence is broken. You go, oh, okay. A marketer would look at that, take a photo, go home, create a really nice document, really nice poster, like, to Mr. You know, number 75 who lives at this address. Here's a photo. This is what it could look like. A nice, beautiful new fence. Takes it, you know, a day goes by, 2 days go by. It looks wonderful. Gets it printed, laminated, goes, puts it in the letterbox, goes home, sits and waits for the phone call, right? A salesperson walks up the door, knocks on the door, person opens the door. Hey, I see you got a broken fence. I fix fences. Do you want me to fix your fence? That's the difference. You know what I mean? Just sell. It's easier.
Yeah. And you need to be very specific on what is the value proposition. Like, you know, I can, like, the value proposition is that I will fix your fence. I will do it at that cost. I will do it at, you know, today.
In this time frame,
like, Yeah. And then you have your ideal client profile, which is the guy with a broken fence.
Right.
And then if you put all of this in one sentence, it's a very strong marketing message as well. Like, you can target, like, if there was a recent storm in the neighborhood and you target the neighborhood and you say, I will fix your fence at that cost, like half the cost in 2 days, and this is targeted. You have everything in one sentence, and then you sell. But if you go broad, you don't talk to the people that they have the need, then the message gets diluted. Or if
you don't have a message.
Exactly. Or,
You know,
or if
like,
you don't have if you don't have something to say. It can be very easy. Like, one of the examples I was telling, at some point I saw that the coffee prices, like coffee beans prices, went like 2 times up last year or something like that. I don't remember, or cocoa beans. So a simple marketing message could be for people like coffee shops that they buy, you know, lots of kilos or tons of cafe or cacao or whatever. Like a simple marketing message, like if you had stock of coffee, like wholesale, you're a wholesaler and you had stock of coffee, like, okay, I will sell you coffee at last year prices. Like, it's a very, like, everyone will know. So it's highly targeted. The value proposition is there, and then you sell. Like, but you need to be focused on the value, on the ideal client profile. Put everything in one sentence and put it in front of the people.
Absolutely. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I really like what you said as well, specifically about, you know, how essentially sales feeds into marketing. You can't have marketing without sales first, because of how can you know what to say in your marketing messages until you've figured out what works when speaking directly to that consumer. You know, you need to go through that iterative process like we're doing and like many, many others do, of trying. And then it's like, that sentence worked. Why? How can we make that sentence work better? okay, let's tweak it. Let's make it better. So, okay, we said we fix fences, but now we need to say for how much. Okay, that didn't quite land, and maybe we need to restructure our pricing. You do that, and you do it again and again and again, and that's at a point when you go, okay, now every time we say this to a customer, it translates to X amount of revenue. We think we've optimized it the best we possibly can. We have the extra money that we're prepared to lose because it's like a casino, right? That we can afford to lose that money. Now we put those two things together and we put it into marketing. And I think that's the mistake a lot of people make. They try and rush to that first. Money they can't afford to lose, no idea what the messaging should be. And of course it doesn't work. Of course it doesn't. And then they don't understand why not. The truth is, to me, the answer always comes back to sales. But then to throw another, spanner in the works, like the analogy of the fence is good. But if we really wanted to stick true to, I guess, our domain, right, of software, of tech, and being in the startup ecosystem, the truer representation of that would be you would walk past and see a broken fence, and then you would see a queue of people at the front door, all carpenters knocking on the door wanting to fix the fence. That is actually the true comparison, because then, like you said about the abundance, like there is an enormous amount of competition. So then the game changes again. Then it's no longer about going in with the most concise message. I think it's personally that's when you need to knock on the door and go, I come in, I'll fix the fence, I'll do it at a competitive rate. But on top of that, I'll come back next week and I'll check how the fence is doing. Every year for the next 5 years, I'll be it'll be free fixes. If the storm comes back again, it'll be on me. I'll fix it. It's like, now you have to deliver above and beyond so that they just go, yeah, you're the guy, everyone else go home. That's the difficult bit. That's where it gets tricky.
Excellent example. Yeah, I totally agree. You're right. And it's how you construct the value proposition so you can differentiate from the rest of the market, that they provide a similar service but not the same value.
That's the difficult bit.
Yeah. And I also agree with that sales provides excellent feedback for marketing, so the marketing can scale the message, like sales can say what it works, what it doesn't work for which segment. And then this is the key, the value that marketing can get amplify the message towards a specific segment.
If you are enjoying this episode and want to support the show, please like, subscribe with notifications turned on, and let us know your thoughts and opinions in the comments below. This lets YouTube know we are doing something right. Back to the show.
Promoting the value that sales has identified in order to bring more leads, more flow for the sales. So it's
and eventually it becomes a symbiotic relationship. Once the sales engine and the marketing engine have become mature enough, they begin to feed into each other. So then the lessons that are learned from marketing eventually start getting fed back into the sales and so on. And that's when you start getting a really interesting dynamic. And then, of course, you start factoring in other things too, like a very mature customer service team or customer success team. And they too should start feeding back into those engines, even then feeding into the product. And so then you should start seeing the symbiosis occur across all of the different departments. I'll be honest, I haven't seen that operationally executed very well a lot. But when I do see it executed very well, it's kind of a beautiful thing to see. It's like someone showing you, I don't know, some ancient religious artifact from like, the 1600s. You're just like, okay, that's special,
Yeah. It's like a choreography or something like.
Right. Yeah, it's like the Holy Grail. Yeah.
I think that no business can scale a lot without that. Like it's a prerequisite for big scale. Like you can go up to a point, but if you really need to dominate a market and scale a lot, like this needs to be perfect.
I mean, that could be the cure for what you were saying about the percentage of businesses that don't survive past the 10-year period, because to your point, a lot of that is down to the inability to stay current and stay with the times. But if you've built the machine in that way, which is very difficult to do, but if you can, then in theory, you have built in its own survival mechanisms to always be ahead, because every single part of it is feeding back into its own success. I wish I knew exactly how that worked to be able to write it down and sell a book or something or a framework. But it's just one of those things that I only know it when I see it. You know what I mean? It's quite a complex beast.
Yeah, and then even when you build that mechanism, then everything changes from generation to generation. So this mechanism needs to adapt to new methods. And then I think what you said about the feedback from sales to marketing and from marketing to sales becomes very relevant to provide that kind of information so that mechanism can adapt to the new needs of the market.
And also feeding into things like product, right? Like to your point about what you do, in your company, you probably see this a lot. Like it's astounding how many organizations do not take the frontline feedback that's being gathered from sales, from marketing, from customer support, customer success, and feeding that back to a product team. Like it just doesn't happen. There is no system in place that even allows for people to flag things up in so many very, very large organizations. That's nuts. Or there is, but it's just such a slow, cumbersome, sort of bureaucratic process that nobody bothers, because they just know it just gets lost. Here's another feature request for the same thing we've been asked for 1 year. There's no point submitting it. It will be ignored. That happens too.
Yeah.
I wonder how AI will really change. Because I had a great conversation with someone in the last episode actually whose whole area is in AI agents and AI swarms and all this kind of thing. I wonder how this can play a pretty significant role working beneath the organization to maybe facilitate a lot of this communication and infrastructure. Could be interesting.
Yeah, that's very interesting because you can respond to customers' feedback if they tell you about their needs, because sometimes it can be even harder. You might be losing clients because somebody else satisfies their needs without even your customers telling you that they have these needs. If you are lucky, they will give you feedback, but maybe you're not even lucky enough to get that feedback, and you don't know what's going on.
You don't know what you don't know. Yeah, I mean, this is a very big problem in the UK as well, because of it. British people are pretty good at not complaining, right? And,
right.
it was always a thing. When I used to work in restaurants when I was a teenager and in my early 20s and waiting tables, and it was always a thing. I would encourage people. You can tell when someone is unhappy. You can tell. And British people, they'll be like, oh no, everything's fine. And you could tell they're not. But foreigners, they would tell you. And I appreciated that because you could do something about it. So I would just always encourage people, say, look, I can tell something isn't right. Please tell me. I won't be upset. It's my job. You're not going to hurt my feelings. This isn't my restaurant. I just work here. Just tell me, what did we do wrong? What can we do better? And then they tell you, and then you can do something. And it's amazing how better people feel. I think we do a very bad job at, again, it's just you just need to be 1% better and ask the question. I think we do a very bad job at A, asking, and B, at least pretending like we give a shit, to be honest.
Yeah.
But
this is another problem that I have seen in startups. They ask their friends and relatives about to value their idea, and I always tell them,
terrible idea.
Yeah, when you go to ask your relatives about this idea, you should be asking like, hey, a friend of mine has this idea, but I don't think it's a good idea. Like, I think it's a problematic idea. What do you think? So provide some negative bias and see if it can stand or not, rather than saying, hey, I have this idea. Do you like it? Of course they will like it.
Yeah, it always goes back to that scientific principle of, you should be going out to try and disprove your thesis, not to try and prove it, right?
Yeah,
because you will always find the data to support an argument if you're looking for it, or to support an idea if you're looking for it. It's as simple as that. And especially if you ask people that apparently love you, like, of course they're gonna say that. They don't want to hurt your feelings. Listen, man, we've come to the end already.
It's a menace.
It's a what? Sorry,
trying to avoid hurt other people's feelings. It can be a menace. Like
Yeah,
it's
it really can. It really can. Yeah, even to what we were talking about earlier, right?
yeah.
About free speech and things like that. It is a problem. Like it is a very difficult balance because we do want to obviously be nice people, but it's about delivery. I think that's what it comes down to. It's about delivery. Like, so you know, the 1 hour sessions I do, I got a reputation in that first year of doing it as the no bullshit advisor, and then I decided to take that title, and I was like, yep, I'm the no bullshit advisor. And the way I'd always start all of the sessions is, look, I'm direct, I'm to the point, but I'm not rude, I'm not impolite. There's a difference, and I think that's the key. Is
Yeah,
it's
many people
about
mix that.
right, and it's about, not everyone has that skill of being honest and being direct, telling people what they should hear, not what they want to hear, but also not being rude about it. That's difficult, and so not everyone has that level of communication, which is fine. And I don't get it right all the time either. I get it wrong too. You know, we all do. And then you can't help how it's interpreted as well. That's out of your control. I always remember the only review I've got on my Trustpilot that isn't 5 stars is, I think is it 3 or 4 stars. And basically the reason why it's lower than all the others is because of it. She said in the review, it was hard to hear. But then you read the rest of the review and it just says, but he was right. And you know, and made really good points, and it was really helpful, but I just didn't like it. And it's like, okay, I can't do anything about that. Like, you know, but valid, you know, I can't help how you feel about it. That's you're entitled to be hurt, you know?
Yeah, yeah. That's I think that's for a very big discussion. That
Yeah. Next
it's
time.
another. Yeah, next time.
Listen, man, thank you so much for your time. It's been wonderful speaking with you. I hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as I have. It's been
Absolutely,
wonderful.
Greg.
And
Thank you for inviting me.
yeah, an absolute pleasure, man.
Good luck with your launch and product.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And yeah, look, if you ever want to know any more about that, let me know. You know, we're always looking for partners and help to get the word out there. So yeah, that'd be great. But yeah, look, I'll put your LinkedIn below, the websites as well as your businesses in the description of this episode. So people who want to check you out, follow you, check out what you're doing from your business's perspectives too, then they can do that. Yeah, anyone you want to shout out or anywhere else you want to send people to?
Mostly startuppers and founders that I know how hard it is, but you know, if it's in you, if it's in your heart, like keep doing. It's difficult, but there are lots of people understanding how hard it is, and just keep doing it.
That's a good message, man. I 100% endorse that message from you. So thank you. Keep going. All right, man. Well, look, have a lovely evening, a wonderful weekend, and hopefully we'll catch up again very soon.
Yeah. Thank you, Greg.
Cheers.
Nice seeing you. Bye.
Thank you for listening and or watching. Please like and subscribe. Or if you are listening via podcasting service and want to show your support, consider rating or leaving a review. It really helps. See you next week.